This program does not provide medical advice. We assume no liability for the information provided on Mind Force Radio. Please consult your physician before beginning any exercise or nutrition program.
This is Roger LaPointe, and I have known Bob Whelan for many years at this point, and he is one of the most intense individuals you will ever meet. Go Mind Force Radio.
From Mind Force Radio, this is Natural Strength Night with Maximum Bob. On Natural Strength Night, we don't talk about the other things Bob likes to talk about. Tonight, we only talk strength training. When I say strength training, I don't mean training like punk-ass goons in the muscle magazines who jacked up on juice, steroids, and PEDs. I mean natural strength. Strength built on good food, heavy weights, and no shortcuts. If you want to learn about real natural strength, weight training the right way, the old school way, stick around. Bob and his friends just might teach you something.
He's here, the host of Natural Strength Night, Maximum Bob Whelan.
Tonight's guest is Bill Piche. I've known Bill for at least 15 years. He is a real gentleman and one of the good guys in this field. Bill competed as a powerlifter and did a triple bodyweight deadlift as one of the top natural powerlifters in the country back in the 1980s. You have to be careful shaking hands with Bill, too. He is a certified captain of crush, closing the number 3 gripper, which is very hard to do. He recently turned his attention to natural bodybuilding, and he is becoming about as cut as Clarence-Bass. He is extremely knowledgeable on proper nutrition for bodybuilding, too, and that's mainly to lose fat without losing muscle. So I'll be picking Bill's brain on this tonight. He is the author of an excellent ebook that I highly recommend entitled How to Transform Your Physique. He is a contributing author in the book Maximize Your Training, and he is the author of a best-selling gripper course entitled The KTA Program. Bill has written numerous articles for various publications such as Hard Gainer, Milo, Powerlifting USA, Monster Muscle, Hard Training Newsletter, Master Trainer Newsletter, and several websites too. He has a few on my website, naturalstrength.com. Bill is also an internet pioneer. He started one of the best and first, and probably the first, strength training websites on the net called Cyberpump way back in 1995. It is enormously popular, and it's grown into a network. It now includes several of the best and most popular strength training, grip training, and iron game history websites in the world. Cyberpump.com is the place to go for real, truthful strength training advice. That's CYBERPUMP.com. Big Bill, welcome to Natural Strength Night.
I really appreciate you having me on the show.
All right, Bill, let's get right into it. The first question, what are your biggest lessons learned since you started strength training?
Okay, so one of the biggest lessons learned that really didn't, it was probably the least thing on my radar when I first started lifting. And there was a lot of, if you really look back it was back in 1979 when I first started lifting. The biggest mistake was not looking at the proper nutritional aspect of training that accompanies the training itself. So it didn't matter. I bought right into the supplement thing right away, right out of the gate, as being a youngster in high school, which is typical. And at that time where I actually grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, there were no commercial gyms. And so all I had was Muscle Builder Power at the time and for information. And unlike today, which we'll talk about social media and its impact, there wasn't much information, period, out there, and it was very obscure. So the first thing that I saw was a huge influence, and what I wanted to do after getting squashed in football is really how I got started lifting in the first place. And so right out of the gate, from a nutrition aspect, it never came into play until way late. And we're talking decades later about how important that aspect is. And so it's probably number one. And when I say decades, it probably wasn't until somewhere in the last, I would say even the last 5 to 6 years, really, where it got in my head that it's a lot. Is what your impact for your training happens in what your diet is. So I would say that would be number one for me. So number two was, again, the influence. I wanted to be strong, and it was getting strong at all costs. And because I wanted to get strong, it naturally led to powerlifting. And so I started competing in powerlifting. And to get strong for me back then was at all costs, which meant really at all costs from a technique and form standpoint. So there really wasn't a lot of technique that I used. It was more use all aggression and basically get the weight. The third one would be not understanding actual progression and what that meant in the grand scheme of things, and then being from a goal standpoint, not setting realistic goals, and the idea that there was going to be infinite gains. In all three of those together, maybe not so the nutrition part, but the actual getting in and lifting, and then the not using proper progression led to the injuries as well as the powerlifting.
How would you explain your theory on proper progression? What does that mean to you?
Well, back when I was doing it improperly, was every workout you go up 5 or 10 pounds. It didn't matter what the workout, every single workout. Now I try to use the example of, say, the squat. So if you're squatting 200 pounds for 10 repetitions at the beginning of a year, and 50, and you only say, for example, you only squat one time a week, and you add 10 pounds to the bar each squat session, that's basically 52 weeks of a 10-pound increase. That's 520 pounds of gain in a year, which is physically impossible, obviously. And when you put it in those terms, people, they scratch their head. So thinking you could go up 5 to 10 pounds every workout was obviously erroneous.
What is your take today, Bill, on training to failure versus what you thought decades ago?
One of the things I've learned, especially in the past couple of years, training to failure, people are using every other body part when they're training. Say, for example, doing a bicep curl. They're actually ended up doing more of a power clean, and they're using every other muscle in their body. So when I thought I was training to failure, there was a lot of other muscles that were being involved in the movement, and a lot of times the actual muscle that was supposed to be worked was not being worked over the full range of motion in full extension and contraction. And so when I was, quote, reaching failure, it really wasn't true failure for the muscles that I was targeting. And so it was a misnomer. So, but actual failure ended up being body failure, if you want to really get into it, on a lot of the exercises, because everything else was coming into play when I was working different muscles. For example, the squat, you'll see people, the squat can be the worst leg developer there is, because people turn it into a back lift, and they're exploding, and the amount of tension, for example, on their legs is a microsecond for what they're doing, and they're using a large, and say their range of motion is limited, they end up using a large amount of weight that also, it really hits their nervous system adversely. So you got all those things added up together, and so failure really isn't as precise as what I believe it should be today from that perspective, and it all has to do with how people are executing all the different lifts.
I know exactly what you mean, because I see a lot of guys when they squat, it looks like they're doing a variation of a good morning movement.
Yeah, exactly. So the squat, that's why I said people don't, they put the bar down low on their back. The bar goes over their hips. It becomes a lower back hip movement. And then people wonder why using too much weight for too low repetitions. And that's why if you know the 20 rep squat routine is very effective, because my belief now is even for legs, you need to use higher repetitions. And then in general, the other thing is people are afraid of doing higher repetitions, and I was as well. And it was 5 or less, or you're toning, even back then when I first started. And that people are afraid of using higher repetitions, and that's a big mistake in my opinion. And that includes for upper body too.
Yeah, and I think you also probably back then used mostly free weights, right? And probably now you use a lot of machines. Is that correct?
That's correct. I love using machines now in comparison. I use some free weights. I use both, and they're both tools to be able to contract the muscle and get the muscle working. It's not to hit my joints. It's not to basically hump weights up and things like that. So I also love it because it allows me to train faster with respect to rest between sets, which is another thing that I actually, going back to the mistakes, is not accounting for the rest in between sets and what a huge variation you can have in your workouts. But you see people getting on their smartphones, for example, and all of a sudden there's 10 minutes between sets. That's just not going to cut it, even consistency from a progression standpoint from one workout to the next. So from that standpoint, like I said, I love to be able to use machines because I'm able to train with a higher intensity because of it, and be able to do easily things like drop sets and do pre-exhaust sets and be able to move quickly between exercises.
What are reasonable expectations of muscular and strength gains? Some people seem to think there are infinite gains. Do you agree?
No, actually, Bob, that's one of the things that I guess I've learned over time. You know, from when you first start, you have the big prize on your mind, so to speak, of all different levels, whether it's powerlifting, bodybuilding, or just strength in general. And if you look at it, for example, use a male and say, okay, if you have a male that's say 6% body fat and 200 pounds, that's huge. And there's been a lot of misconceptions, and we'll get into talk a little bit more about social media, but the whole perception of what big and strong is from that standpoint, and what type of levels of muscular body weight that a person can achieve naturally has gotten really skewed from that standpoint. And what I've seen happen is guys get fat. Is really what it amounts to, especially guys that have been training for a longer period of time. They start kidding themselves and from that perspective, and don't really do the shift to health either, or really look at health. And I was one of the worst. Powerlifting is horrible on your body, as I mentioned, and so don't start looking at the health aspect of it. And so what happens is they continue to eat too much, which is another topic I'm going to talk about. Taking too much protein, which is another thing. People get too much protein. And the quote gains that they're getting end up being, a lot of fat that goes along with it. So they're just kind of kidding themselves. And the other thing that, of course, is that form breaks down, and pretty soon partial lifts are being done. That's another thing as far as quote gains. And people don't like for me to tell them this, but it really comes down to you have to come to a certain point. Either you got it or you don't. And there is no such thing as infinite gains. And yeah, you can still challenge yourself. I'm not saying that you don't come up with new challenges. There's always ways to challenge yourself. And that's what's great about this is you can always come up with some new way to challenge yourself that you've never done before from that perspective. Maybe you didn't do grip training when you were younger. That's one of the things I ended up doing. And so I got into the grip training. And there's plenty of other examples from that perspective. Bottom line still is that you enjoy your training and you look at it from the health aspect. And definitely you got to make that shift at some point in time. Otherwise, typically you're going to get hurt and you're going to be disappointed. And going forward, like I said, you're not going to be happy, at least not the way I see it.
Right, I totally agree. I think some people, they micromanage their training too much, and they're focused too much on numbers, and their progression, they're focusing too much on getting a certain number by a certain time, and if they don't get a certain number, they get upset, and I tell some of these people over and over, and they still don't get it, but I try to keep it positive in my mind. When I talk about gains, I'm talking about self-improvement. I'm not thinking about any certain number. And also things change when you get older, too. You're not going to lift as much when you're 60, as you did when you were competing, in your 20s. It's just pretty much, but I'm still going to be trying to, I'm not even doing the same exercises anymore. I don't squat now with a bar in my back, and I don't, I do mostly trap bar deadlifts now, and I use mostly machines for upper body. I'll throw in some barbells and dumbbells once in a while, but for upper body, I mostly use hammer, and I have a Nautilus Power Plus military press, but I mostly use hammer and just a few free weight things that I'm using right now. But you have to adjust when you get older.
Yeah, and the thing about it is I kind of liken it, the way I feel is that I'm low on oil as it is from that standpoint, like a car, and I found that dynamically is where you can get, if you start getting, and of course I did it wrong anyway when I was younger, but if you try and get in dynamic, I found my static strength is still, it's really strange, but my static strength is there a lot more than my dynamic, where dynamic feels like I'm going to blow apart, basically, but as long as I pause, I actually work with weights so I can actually pause and contract. In static, do somewhat of a little bit of a static hold in the contracted position, and I found that's a heck of a lot more effective. And actually, it's something that there's a lot of different training aspects, whether you're doing isometrics or other things that I basically missed out on. And like I said, I was down in my basement for the majority of the training until the last about 3 or 4 years, where I am now using hammer strength exclusively from that standpoint, and I don't barbell squat anymore. I actually do a version of goblet squat because I'm able to control the weight exactly and keep it towards my center of gravity a lot more as well. And I find it's more of a cardiovascular. I use it to also get some cardiovascular. That also, by the way, is something that I think people aren't training very hard. Even when they're not using, they're again not using proper form, they're still not training very hard. And one of the things is being able, a great variable as you get older to try and progress is limited as far as the amount of rest. And I think I talked about that earlier. Is forget standing around. And I did, Bob. I'm telling you, I did too much standing around when I was younger, when I was training.
Yeah, no, I believe you. I mean, in powerlifting, that's what you do, but it's a whole different sport. It's fun, and because you're focusing only on the weight, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I kind of like that in a way, but I can see how you're not going to get as good of a workout in.
Yeah, exactly.
If you go fast, you're going to get a lot better conditioning. If you're looking to get overall conditioning as well as just strength, then definitely going faster is better.
Yeah. So one of the other things is people training like powerlifters still, or they've never even competed and they're still training like powerlifters. You're not going to get, powerlifting is about leverages. It is about how you're wired up, okay? It's not necessarily directly correlated to how much you develop and how much muscle you put on your body. Is it correlated? Yeah, depending on your genetics. But there's plenty of powerlifters, 148 pounds that can, squat 600 pounds and their legs look like not very big from a musculature standpoint, okay? And then you'll have another 148-pounder that looks like quads like Tom Platz. So it all depends on your, what your genetics dictate. But for the majority of the people, performing a set of 3 reps is a test of strength. And when you're getting into 5s and everything, unless you're doing multiple sets, you're not going to get, like myself, I wasn't doing that many sets. So don't expect you to put on a huge, as much maybe potential muscle mass that you may be able to put on, just because, in my opinion, you're not going to be hitting the rep ranges where you're necessarily going to be stimulating it fully. So, again, people train like powerlifters, and they wonder why. Well, geez, I'm not really I really don't look any better per se, or I'm not in my musculature. I'm not getting developed on all parts and everything.
Yeah, what I used to do, I used to just train the power lifts, just those 3 lifts, like a power lifter. And then I would have, the rest of my workout more like a bodybuilding routine. I would do, because I've always done lots of exercises, and I still do. I mean, I've never been one of these 9-minute workout kind of guys. My workouts usually take an hour because I like to throw everything in there. I mean, I like to do the horizontal and vertical push and pull, and I like to do abs, neck, grip, and now I'm usually doing one set, but I like to throw stuff in, like wrist roller and things like that. So, but the main thing is that you enjoy it, right? So as long as you enjoy it and you're having a good time with it and you love it, you're going to stick with it. So my view of the expectations is mostly mental, because if you're happy with what you're doing, and it's kind of a mental disappointment for lots of people because they don't know how to manage their expectations.
And like I said, the aspect even social media has made it even more skewed from what expectations are from that standpoint. And one caveat I want to add about enjoying training. You can't enjoy training if you're injured, okay? And I'm pretty hard over on this. My point is any sort of strength training program, and some people are going to disagree with me, I'm sure, and that's fine. There's nothing you should be doing when you're lifting from that perspective that should put you in jeopardy of injuring your body. It's supposed to be something that's making your body stronger and more resilient, especially as you get older. It shouldn't be putting you in danger of getting injured. It shouldn't be part of the game. Now, if you're competing in powerlifting, just to say that I'm going to go in the gym and injure myself as a casual trainee that's supposed to be doing it to make themselves right. Same thing with athletes. There's no way an athlete should be taken off the field, in my opinion, because of the strength training routine.
What injuries did you get again from powerlifting, Bill?
I hurt my back. It was mainly multiple strains. You can't bend over. You probably remember that one, Bob, right? You can't bend over very well. You strain your lower back. I never popped anything, which thank goodness. One of the things I finally found for me, what ended up being the fountain of youth, I tried all sorts of things where, I had to use an NSAID at times, even to sleep, like leave and everything. And finally, after, chiropractor and multiple different chiropractors over the years and trying different things and stretching, I found that foam rolling, believe it or not, it's more heavy duty, deep tissue massage, has enabled me to basically not have to take anything, and has alleviated any sort of lower back pain that I had before. So I think everything was just tightening up over the years, and by using, I do it twice a day. Basically I do a foam roll twice a day, but it's a very heavy one, and go through my whole body twice a day religiously. And that keeps me, as far as I haven't used an anti-inflammatory, for example, in years for any of the former aches and pains that I had carried over for years from powerlifting, mainly the lower back.
Do you still do squats or deadlifts with a bar?
Gosh, it may even be 10 years, just north of 40, probably about 43.
You have a squat machine?
Well, yeah, actually, what I'm using is doing goblet squats, which is taking a dumbbell, and I basically do higher repetition drop sets where I set up a row of dumbbells, and what I'll do is perform a set of goblet squats, and then just pick the next dumbbell up and get somewhere. Typically, it's about 30 to 40 repetitions. Rest 30 seconds and repeat. So I go back up to the heaviest dumbbell. That's what I'm currently doing right now, and I usually do 3 cycles of that, and I'm done. But I'm also focused. I'm actually focusing not on just getting the weight. I'm actually focusing on using my hamstrings to pull myself into the bottom position. I'm also so very, very controlled. I'm not dropping using gravity at all, so I'm actually, like I said, I'm pulling myself into the bottom position and contracting, and then smoothly contracting to the top. Not super slow by any means, just smooth. So I basically limit any accelerations or any sort of jerking in the movement at all. I'm completely smooth. So that's what I've been doing lately. To be honest with you, I haven't Previous to that, there was I did some leg press. There's a machine, at the gym, did some leg press, and I was still doing lighter squats at the time. But after once my back was in order, I decided I'm not going to do any major spine-bearing exercises, direct spine-bearing exercises on top of my shoulders.
I now do machine squats. I have a squat machine very similar to a pendulum machine, but it was real heavy duty, made like a hammer machine. It was kind of a combination of a hammer machine as far as how strong it was, but it was similar to a pendulum squat. I've had that for about 15 years. It works good because the way it fits you, it takes that pressure off that spot. You know how the powerlifters always have that, if you've competed a long time, we talked about this before, but we have kind of a bump on our back where the bar goes.
Yeah. Yep.
You have one of those too?
Yeah, it's like you end up having a slot back there. So
yeah, it's almost like your body manufactures tissue or something but anyway, when you get older, that little spot, I don't know what it is, but it hurts when you put the bar there. So you got to find a different spot to put it, right? But this machine is perfect.
The only reason why is that there isn't one at the gym. There's 2 or 3 machines that I've seen on videos when people have posted videos, and I look at it and it's like, man, I wish the gym that I train at had one of those babies, so I'm jealous, Bob, for sure. The only reason why I like it, I just don't want to get on a 45-degree leg press. The leverages are too good. It sounds bad, but it's kind of weird to say that, but the leverages on a 45 are too good. And it just doesn't feel right, so I just don't have a good machine like that. Otherwise, I'd be all over it.
Yeah, but Bill, what you're doing is working. I've seen your recent photos. You should stick to what you're doing. If anyone hasn't seen Bill lately, I mean, you got to go to Cyberpump and check out his picture. He's like a modern-day Clarence-Bass. What is your body fat now, Bill?
I don't know. It's pretty low. I walk around with pretty low body fat nowadays, just naturally, which blows me away because I've now actually in better shape from that perspective by far than when I was in my 20s or at any other time. And like I said, the reason why is it's all diet, discipline right. Associated with it and diet. So I actually, by the way, I actually emailed somebody at University of Iowa, and they had a bod pod or something, and I was trying to contact them. They never responded back to me to see if I could get my body fat measured some way with as accurate a method. And I guess that's pretty accurate, but I'm not sure.
Well, it definitely looks like it's single digits, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's probably south of 10%. I'm pretty comfortable. And nowadays, like I said, people have a tendency to underestimate their body fat, but I'm pretty comfortable, I think, and confident saying that it's probably under 10%.
Let's talk about supplements. How much of a role do you think they play in strength training or bodybuilding, and I mean natural, of course, gains today? Well,
as I mentioned earlier, that was the whole deal, dynamic muscle builder, back in the old muscle builder power and everything. And I've gone complete full circle on that. And even during alternate time that I was powerlifting, I'd have a protein shake and everything like that. And now I don't do any of that. And I also think I mentioned earlier about people eating too much protein. My usual portions, like if I have a piece of chicken, it's a 4-ounce piece of chicken. If you look at the number of grams, and actually I've been keeping track for months, and if you actually look at the grams of protein that you get, even without even trying, if you just eat healthy, it's plenty of protein. So, as you know, a protein shake tends to be one of the main gigs for everybody in the weight game from that perspective. And unless you're looking to put in extra calories specifically, if you're a real skinny guy or something, and for convenience, if you're treating it like a meal and you actually have a good carbohydrate with it, the problem is most of the protein powders, like I said, have crap in them, and they have all sorts of processed stuff. And now I just read an article. My son sent me an article about protein spiking. that can occur. So the stuff, there's a lot of junk out there. So you don't even know what you're getting. And of course, the internet companies have sprung up all over the place. So now you've got supplement companies coming out of our ears. Before, at least back in the 80s, there's just a few. Now everybody's starting a supplement company, and a Transform Nutrition, some of the GAT so you've got them all over the place, and so people are getting bombarded with even more supplements, and people saying that you need to supplement your diet, and I just don't believe in it anymore.
We'll be back with more right after this.
This segment brought to you by VitalNutritionStore.com. Did you know that more than 7 million Americans suffer from coronary heart disease, the most common form of heart disease? Regardless of your age or condition, adding Cardio for Life to your daily regime will dramatically improve your cardiovascular condition. Cardio for Life has been the top-selling L-arginine product in the marketplace now for more than 3 years. It is also the top-selling product at VitalNutritionStore.com. Formulated by Dr. Harry Elward, the best-selling author of Let's Stop the Number One Killer of Americans Today, Dr. Harry believes together we can prevent and reverse heart disease. Cardio for Life comes in 3 wonderful flavors: orange, peach, and grape, and is gluten-free, sugar-free, and sodium-free. Please see our complete line of natural products at VitalNutritionStore.com. That's VITAL Nutritionstore.com.
Randy Roach shocked the world with the release of his first volume of Muscle, Smoke, and Mirrors several years ago. It was a masterpiece of over 500 pages with such in-depth research and detail that it was not only surprising, but shocking and mind-blowing. It was truly one of the best Iron Game history books ever written. He followed that with Volume 2, another epic book with over 700 pages of equal depth and detail. All serious Iron Game fans need to have these books. Please visit Randy's website at randyroach.ca. That's RANDYROACH.ca.
Listen to how Iron Game legend and the Iron Master editor Osmo Kehaw describes the book Supernatural Strength. Have you ever wondered how much real-world experience authors have when they write books about weight training? Who is that person behind the computer? What do they really know about the Iron Game? If you picked up this book, Supernatural Strength, you have definitely come to the right place. The author, Bob Whelan, has spent several decades in the Iron Game trenches training himself, competing and coaching in powerlifting, earning academic credentials too numerous to mention, and thousands of hours of training and instructing athletes and trainees of all levels at his Washington, D.C. gym since 1990. He's not only devoted his life to motivating and pushing people to heights they have never been to, but elevating the trainees' understanding why certain methods work better than others. Bob is one of the most respected and revered trainers in the business today. This book is sure to surprise and amaze you at the same time. Order now at supernaturalstrength.com. That's supernaturalstrength.com.
Don't you think it would be so much easier getting into shape if you had a personal coach? Just like all the celebrities do. Well, now you can. Bob Whelan of webstrengthcoach.com wants to get you out of your rut and coach you to success. He's dedicated to helping you achieve your strength and fitness goals through your hard work and his expert guidance. Bob will help you with strength training, muscle building, fitness, nutrition, and motivation. He'll make sure you achieve your maximum physical potential. You can get one-on-one training with Bob through his website, webstrengthcoach.com. He will develop a personalized program tailored to your individual needs, a program right for you. Bob will give you feedback after every workout. This is old school fitness and nutrition. No fads and no gimmicks. Bob will use proven natural techniques to make sure you are satisfied. So visit webstrengthcoach.com today and let Bob help you reach your best self. webstrengthcoach.com.
Do you enjoy history without social engineering? Reading about our founding fathers? Economics from a capitalist perspective? Wisdom from modern patriots? Welcome to UncleSamBooks.com, where virtues like rugged individualism, hard work, and the American dream dominate. UncleSamBooks.com. Great books for homeschooling. UncleSamBooks.com.
If you want to become as strong and muscular as possible with health in mind, and without lowering yourself to using steroids, the best advice can be found in the classic strongman books of long ago. These are the best books ever written on the subjects of strength training, weightlifting, strongman training, iron game history, and old-time physical culture. Many of them can still be found at physicalculturebooks.com. There you will find good, honest, time-tested wisdom from the great old-time strongmen. To maximize your natural muscular and strength potential, please visit physicalculturebooks.com.
Listen to Ken Manny, head strength and conditioning coach at Michigan State University, describe the book Iron Nation. A masterpiece text on some of the most intriguing and compelling personal stories, iron game history, and gut-wrenching training routines ever put to paper. If you truly love hard training without all the frills of pomp and circumstance so common today, you will love Iron Nation. Written by lifters for lifters. If you love weight training, you will love Iron Nation. Order now at ironnation.com. That's IRON Nation.com.
If you would like to promote your business on Mindforce Radio, we would love to hear from you. Please let us know if you are interested in a 30 or 60-second voice commercial or a banner website ad. Please contact Bob using the contact information provided on mindforceradio.com.
You're listening to Natural Strength Night on Mindforce Radio.
Do you believe in any supplements at all? Like, do you take anything for health?
Yeah, a multivitamin. Yeah, because it's cheap. I still look to try to get a high-quality multivitamin. But now the way I'm eating, with the way I eat vegetables and everything, I'm probably even overkill. And usually I only do it, maybe every other day. And even then I'm questioning whether I even need to do it from that standpoint. But a little insurance, it's cheap. So, yeah, the multivitamin stuff I was focusing on was all the other junk out there, as you know, whether it's, it's testosterone boosters or all the different protein powders that are out there. There's just so many of them. So that's when I was referring to that. That's what I was talking about. But yeah, I do take a multivitamin on occasion.
I believe that just about all performance supplements, especially protein, is a complete waste of money. Just like you, I do take a few things for health, but they have nothing to do with strength training. Now, Bill, I know you've been dying to talk about this next question. You've been chomping at the bit, right? What do you think about social media and its role today in training information or misinformation?
Well, all it's done is exponentially put an exponential on the thing as far as the misinformation. I've never seen so much misinformation and so much garbage. It's gotten to the point now it's getting of a spam proportion from that perspective. So, and it's just overwhelming. I just wouldn't know what to think. We've got chubby 16-year-old kids having YouTube channels with 50,000 followers. It's ridiculous. I mean, he's barely been in the gym probably for 2 years. It's unbelievable, and that's just one example. And he's selling T-shirts and everything like that. It's like, and the bad part about it is it'd be the equivalent of when I started back in 1979 as a young kid in high school. I got my head beat in football and wanted to get stronger for football. And now you got all these internet experts that literally, this is not made up, Bob. This kid is probably 17 or 18 now. I exaggerated a little bit. But when he started, he probably was 16 years old. And he's giving out advice, and then he's got all these followers. It's an epidemic proportions. and we're not even going to talk about some of the other bad areas from that, the dark side of things as well, that are just getting all sorts of, like I said, all the information and all the texting and all the selfies and everything that's going on. So the good part is, so I'm always trying to be positive about things, is that from a health standpoint, so I'm going to connect to health, you got to be your own self-advocate when it comes to health and having a healthy body going forward. So assuming that someone is training to be healthy, that information is really good. For example, if I want to know about asparagus and everything about asparagus, I can go in Google and find all that information at my fingertips. What's the better vegetables from a nutrition standpoint? So that's a very positive thing about about explosion in general of the internet, and even connecting into social media, where you can find organic food, for example, where the companies are very well connected with social media. So that's where I like, that's the positive aspect of it. So unfortunately, in my opinion, the negative still outweighs the positive.
One of the most positive parts of social media is your website, cyberpump.com. So if anyone out there hasn't heard of it, I mean, you probably all should have, but in case there's a few that haven't, cyberpump.com is one of the best sites you can go to. It's truthful, honest information, no hype, and you're listening to the guy who owns and runs it, so you know it's one of the best sites on the net. So cyberpump.com. So Bill, how did you think of that website? You know, because you started that way back, what, in 95 or so?
Okay, well, what had happened was, so I had basically got connected into the internet through work at that time, and nobody at where I work was connected, and we just happened to have a special type of workstation that ended up getting connected to the early internet. And at that time, we actually got connected just before our web pages really started, just a little bit briefly, and all they had was news groups. And at the time, I called it the news group wars, because it was basically like the early discussion forum format, except they were called news groups. And there, I believe it was miscellaneous.fitness.weight. At first, I think it was named something else. But everybody who's interested in strength training, powerlifting, bodybuilding, all that, basically hung out and posted these messages there. And that's when the first hit versus all others started way back then as well. And so what happened next was the early internet sites, majority of them, and you're going to laugh at this one when I tell you, the Yahoo I kind of scoffed at. I basically said, I looked at all the internet sites, and all anybody did back then was link to each other. So all they had, all the early websites were just link pages, basically. They're just a bunch of links, and I scoffed at Yahoo at the time. Yeah, this thing kind of stinks. All this is a bunch of links. This isn't a big deal. And no one was providing any sort of content. And a friend at work, again, told me about GeoPages, which actually was run out of a bank, I believe, in California. They had some web servers, and you could sign up for a free home GeoPage. And so at that time, the GeoPages actually were like street addresses. So I believe an early one was for Cyberpump was GeoPages / the tropics / with a street address like 11 something. And I actually put I think his name was Roland Sherlock on it, just to see if I could put an image up on the web page. And I thought it was the coolest thing because I could publish something for everyone in the world to see. And so I got one of those free pages, and I decided that at that time, let's provide some content to combat the muscle comic books at the time, because there was nothing like it on the web. And so I started writing some articles. And through that news group, people that hung out there, Matt Brisky hung out there, Rob Spector hung out there, and eventually they were posting there. and some others as well. That Lyle McDonald, I don't know if you've ever heard of Lyle, but he's published many books now. Basically recruited people to write for Cyberpump. And one of the other foundational principles that I created early from a website standpoint that really irritated me that other websites didn't do is they didn't update very often. And so I made it a pact basically to make sure at least multiple times a week and try to update daily. And basically continued to recruit writers. Pretty soon the address changed. It continued to grow. We started getting early awards based on it because no one was providing content, and we were basically providing new articles almost on a daily basis. And then through the news group, it continued to grow as well. And so GeoPages ended up turning into GeoCities. And pretty soon we outgrew GeoCities because we're getting too much traffic. And they basically said, after winning some awards and things like that, Cyberpump was in GQ magazine and won some early web awards before the thing, the World Wide Web really exploded. Moved to a different location and registered cyberpump.com as a .com. The name was the same. The address actually got to be a .com address. And it continued to grow, and server bandwidth continued to be a problem. And pretty soon it got to the point where we had to put it behind what's called the donators area, which also was unique. It's still there today. So it's $1 a month basically, and that was a decade ago, and that hasn't changed. And that's basically just to make sure now we're on a dedicated server. So there's multiple .coms associated with Cyberpump, including gripboard.com, which is a grip discussion forum. And so it continued to grow, and we had to either live or die about, I think it at least was about a decade ago, probably about 8 or 9 years actually, and decided, okay, it's going to live or die by the members because it was just too much traffic to be able to handle it without basically going in the red, period, deep. And so that's what happened there, and it's been basically surviving due to some very dedicated people that still support the site, and we have some sponsors as well, such as yourself, Bob, that continue to support what we do on Cyberpump. So that's kind of where we're at, and we're still, so there's basically been articles published since 1995, so it's going on 19 years, almost on a daily basis. So if someone could go in Cyberpump, and we're adding new content on a weekly basis. I have my column in there, How to Transform Your Physique, and I think I'm on entry number 190-something. And we continue to add content, and you get lost in there. So it's a huge library of articles. I don't want to forget to mention ironhistory.com, which is also part of the Cyberpump network. Joe Rourke, who used to be the IFBB historian, runs one of the best, I think it's the best, a discussion forum on iron history. And he has a regular column on Cyberpump as well that I don't think we've missed. It's got to be going on 10 years, updating his column every week, where he covers iron history from Paul Anderson to bodybuilding to you name it. So it's like a library of iron history we have stored on Cyberpump as well. It's actually all on one dedicated server. And there's actually a guy, people don't know this, and I might as well tell some people know this. There's actually a server administrator. He's the lower level administrator in Russia. His name is Len. And this is something you didn't know, so it hasn't been a secret or anything. So he's a guy that basically makes sure the server stays up, that runs all the various .coms from that perspective. Len is he's a great guy. We've worked together for years now. He's kind of the insurance policy, make sure everything's running from a server standpoint and up and running, and then it doesn't go down if there's any problems or anything. So I bet you that's something you didn't know, Bob, that there's a guy named Len that I've worked with in Russia for years now.
No, I didn't know that, but one of the good things about the Internet is that you can find a lot of great help, and they'll do outstanding work a hell of a lot cheaper than Americans will do it. Like a lot of my books that I had published, the old-time books, I mean, that's just one area. I'll just say I have a lot of Internet stuff, and just my business stuff is done by people in Romania, and all over Eastern Europe. And so you're right. And they do awesome work, too.
Yeah, and like I said, that's a positive thing about the growth of the Internet is not only the information, but a true diverse ability across the world. The grip board is we have members from all over the world. It's a great community we have there in the gripboard.com, and it's just a fun time of people across the world coming together with similar interests, and it works so well from that perspective. And like I said, it's amazing over on the grip board, for example, and how well people get along and everything from that perspective as a community, a grip community, and the camaraderie that goes with it.
And Bill, speaking of grip work, aren't you a captain of Crush?
Yeah, I was certified 2001, I think it was, and that was one of the things. I wrecked everything else except my grip. So it was like, hey, I'm going to do this. This looks really cool. And Brooks Kubik was the guy in a heart training newsletter that had an article on grip training and mentioned the captains of Crush, and that sounded really cool. So he actually, if you go back in time, how did the grip board eventually get to where it's at today? The influence goes all the way back to him in hard training, and that's really the catalyst for me getting involved with grip strength. The grip board, I believe, now has been around for over 12 years online from a forum, and it's continued to grow as well. We have the MASH Monster certification that we created from that perspective. We're synced up with all the various people who are, especially Iron Minds. They're when it comes to grippers, they've always been they were the beginning, and they remained strong, obviously, from supplying one of the best things that people get addicted to as far as the captains of Crush grippers.
Now we're going to talk about another one of your great achievements, your ebook, How to Transform Your Physique. There's no gimmicks. It's healthy eating, and I know it works because I've tried it. I'm not doing it all the time like you, but I've tried it. I like to stuff my face and be a pig, Bill. That's the truth. But when I want to trim down, I just pull out your book, and it always works. I mean, I think the first week I tried it, I lost 6 pounds. Could you talk a little bit about the principles in your great ebook, How to Transform Your Physique? Yeah,
it really comes down to just eating healthy. And one of the basic things that people can get better health, and it's one of the primary things in the ebook, is cutting out sugar and processed sugar. If you do that, and even if you cut back, you're going to find that you're going to improve your overall health. You're going to start dropping body fat as well from that perspective. So that's one of the underlying principles. The rest of the information, really, to be honest with you, people when they read it even say, well, yeah, I read that before or heard that before, and it kind of just puts it all together when we're talking about eating vegetables. Portion control is another one. Drinking enough water. So these are all getting enough good fats in your diet. So principles basically aren't anything new from that perspective, but I don't know why I never put two and two together myself from that and recognized it, and maybe I'm more typical and the average person just doesn't kind of put it all together. So basically what I tried to do is put it all together and make it really simple. And really the goal of the ebook was I just felt I needed to share it with people just because I had gotten such phenomenal results, and it was such basic stuff. Not eating processed foods, cutting out processed foods. Everybody's heard that before. So these really aren't new principles per se. They've been around for decades, but it's just a matter of putting it together and being straightforward and honest about it with no spinning. And that's basically what I did. You're not going to get away. I mentioned portion control. You still can gain weight by even eating too much healthy food. So that's kind of the crux of what I did from that perspective. For example, no alcohol. Okay, if you want it, alcohol is high in calories, or at least limit it. So that was another recommendation as well. But for those people out there, if you want, one of the number one recommendations is control that sugar in your diet, and you're going to be much better off. And that means excluding it if possible. And if you're going to get some sugar, get it from some healthy fruit, but still portion control. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
You're not high on dairy either, right?
That's correct. For some reason, I forgot about that. Thanks for reminding me about it. One of the things I noticed in contests, so I do a lot of reading still today. I love learning. I'm continuously learning. That's one of the things I love about it. I'm always learning something new. One of the things I noticed myself was the effect of dairy that it had on my body fat level. I don't know what it is, chemically or whatever, and then I correlated it to all the. I don't care whether it's all the way from Mr. Olympia down to a local level. I never saw dairy in a contest bodybuilding diet. Okay, so then you're scratching my head going, well, I've seen correlation myself based on the result by cutting out dairy. And you just don't see it in the diet. And no one has come out and say, I've never had someone say, avoid this stuff, but you just don't see it in there. I never saw it in there. So I did get a little bit of data correlation. That's kind of the engineer in me. And but I was never big on it. There's other protein sources, cheese along the way. The other thing that made me cut out dairy, my parents gave me a cholesterol. Basically, I inherited a potential cholesterol problem. I don't have high cholesterol because it's completely controlled with the proper diet. But eating a bunch of cheese, for example, basically elevates my cholesterol big time. So it really is a health thing too. Besides the fact that it makes me retain water, and there's no way I could get into single digits body fat if I ate dairy like I did before when I was powerlifting.
Bill, are you a eat when you're hungry kind of guy, or a 6 meals a day kind of guy, or how many meals do you try to eat a day?
It varies. I'm somewhere. I typically average 4 to 5, and it's really small meals. And the reason why is more psychological. The people say, I don't care about the nutrient timing and all that. When you feel like you're always eating, then you're typically going to have a tendency to me psychologically not go, gee, I'm hungry again. Well, I never eat when I'm hungry because I'm never hungry.
That's one of the keys to success, because if you're trying to cut and you're hungry, it's just not going to work. What makes you so successful is you know how to eat healthy and control your appetite while you do it.
Exactly. One of the things that people don't recognize is, and this is one of the keys, and I want to update my ebook because I've really learned about it as far as healthy eating is I call, you got to feed your dragster high octane dragster fuel, and high octane fuel are things like broccoli, for example. You can eat a boatload of broccoli, and the question is people say, well, it doesn't taste very good. Or there's ways to make it where you can where it tastes better, but again, you got to recognize what you're eating for. Are you eating for health? Or are you eating because it tastes good? So if you eat because it tastes good, at least recognize that. Okay, so you can eat a heck of a lot of broccoli, and say a serving of salmon, grilled salmon, and 2 cups of broccoli. That's a pretty good amount of food. A 6-ounce fillet of grilled salmon, 2 cups of broccoli, say 2 cups of cooked kale, and the amount of calories in that kale and broccoli isn't very great at all. but you're feeling like you're eating a ton of food. And my belief is, I've been experimenting in the past 3 or 4 months. You're eating a lot of food. Your body also has to process that as well. And there's a lot of fiber and bulk associated with it. You're talking about 2 cups of kale cooked and your 2 cups of broccoli. You got the good fats in there from the salmon. It's a huge appetite suppression in general, so I don't walk around hungry. And once I eat a meal, for example, at about 6 o'clock, I'm done eating. That's another thing, Bob, that once I'm done with the last meal, I'm done. So I do not eat anything after that until the next breakfast the next morning. And I'm not starving either, by the way, so I'm not craving something later. My blood sugar levels, because of eliminating sugar completely, I'm not getting any sort of spiking going on in my blood sugar levels to go, God, I'm ravished or anything like that. And the other key thing that people, and they do read this too, is drinking a lot of water. And once you get used to it, I probably drink 2 gallons of water a day throughout the day.
Wow.
And it's just a normal thing. I'm not, do I go to the bathroom quite often? Yeah.
You must be pissing like a racehorse.
So 2 gallons of water a day. And so I also believe that most people are walking around semi-dehydrated. And so you've probably heard that. I remember reading or hearing before, people will eat because they're actually dehydrated, and the body will trigger that, and you'll actually eat instead of drinking. So that's something that it had to be years ago I heard that, and I kind of got correlation with that. Again, I don't have any problem. I'm a habit guy, so I don't have any problem at work. For example, I have a clear jug where I can see 1.5 gallons, so I can base during the course of the day. If I'm low on getting that drink during the course of the day, it stares me in the face. That's a little technique I use with respect to drinking enough water. Sit it on your counter. Here's my goal for the day. I need to have this gone by the end of the day. And if your goal is every time you pass by, say in your kitchen, you see that water jug out there and right smack in front of you, that's kind of, you say, okay, that's my goal. I've got more to go. And so it's kind of a good mental stimulator when you're seeing that goal of drinking that gallon of water a day sitting right there in front of you all the time. So that's a little trick I use with myself as well.
That's a good idea. I got to start doing that down here because I'm in Florida now, and I know I got to drink more water down here. A lot of times when I'm kind of slacking off on diet and I want motivation, I go to your Facebook page. I know that you put lots of delicious-looking, healthy food on there. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, no problem. Well, at least someone was looking at it. And like I said, I feel the reason I posted is just to say that, show, hey, it's pretty simple stuff, and look at how much you can actually eat, from a food standpoint. And that, like I said, that continues to amaze me from that perspective. And by the way, I have to credit my work in the last 6 weeks for this little experiment, because we fielded a team. We had a vegetable challenge at work as part of the wellness program where I work. And we fielded a team of 10 people. And basically you get points for servings of vegetables. And I'm pretty competitive, so it got to the point where it had nothing to do with colorful choices, but it had to do with how many you get top choices. And so that's why I know, for example, kale, spinach, and broccoli, we get an extra point because they're very low calorie and very high nutrient. And so a serving of that will give you 3 points. And so basically what I had done to try and get the full, you could get up to 9 servings a day. And so we actually, I think we came in second. We're in first right now, but we may get overtaken because you can backlog your point. But that whole eating even more vegetables occurred because of that wellness challenge and just being competitive and eating a lot more servings than I ever have before. So I was eating, 2-3 cups of broccoli and finding that I was actually getting more leaner. from that perspective as well by actually increasing those power vegetables. So go figure.
I don't even buy salad anymore. I just make my own out of the broccoli florets. I just cut them up in half, and then just make that the salad. And I just cook a chicken breast or whatever meat or fish or pork chops or whatever, and I cut that up and put it right on top of the broccoli floret salad, and it looks like your Facebook page. And it tastes good too.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because it's pretty. We're to try and get more servings in. What I found was I had this big nonstick frying pan, and found that kale, just like spinach, cooks down immensely. So I had got huge bags of kale from Costco, organic kale, and could put in huge amounts of kale, and it would cook down. I'd cook it down to a very dense. I don't recommend this necessarily, but this was a competition, it would cook down to this kale block. And I actually have a picture on my Facebook page. This huge amount of kale cooked down to this very dense block of 5x5 kale. And that's what I was eating, so I get multiple servings at once. So I don't do that normally, but heck, this was a competition, and all the stops were pulled out for it.
So, Bill, we have time for one more question, and it's going to concern nutrition as well. But I know it's one of the most important things, and that's overlooked a lot too. So for natural bodybuilding, I know both training properly and eating properly are important. But for competition we're talking about, which would you say is more important and why, the training or the eating?
Well, my opinion would be eating primarily. You can do a lot of different things training and just by accident, gain muscle from that perspective. But if you don't have your diet in order from an eating standpoint, it's not going to matter. There's no way that you can, and this is one of the things that I've really preached from the perspective is there's no way you can out-exercise a poor diet or out-train a poor diet. It's just not possible. And a lot of people don't recognize that. And they toil away. Now that I'm training at a commercial gym, I see people come in and they're sweating their buns off, and yet there's no change from a physique standpoint to them. And the reason why is the diet piece is not in order first from that perspective. My belief actually is I'd rather have someone get that in order before I even have them start training. Because they're going to be able to make a lot of progress on, the person, for example, that wants to cut body fat. And I'd actually tell, if they're not interested in training at first, where you could get them interested later, especially if they're untrained, as you know, Bob, and they're ripe for the pickings to gain some muscle then at the same time of cleaning up their diet. But if they're not interested in training, don't worry about that for now. You can make a huge improvement in your health through diet. So again, connecting that in, I think it's critical, period, from that standpoint, to success not only in bodybuilding, but in health and for everyone from that perspective. And I keep putting percentages out there, throwing 80-85% of the game really is all what you take into your body. And I believe even in overall health and things that occur from your overall health standpoint, that's a huge role as well as what you're taking in your body.
Bill, aren't you considering competing in bodybuilding as well? I know you sent me an email about that recently. What bodybuilding competitions are you considering entering?
Well, one of the things I thought about, this was a thought, probably too early. Since I'm 51, one of the things was there's bodybuilding right now. The men's physique thing is exploding, and that's kind of rubbing some of the bodybuilders the wrong way. But that was one thing because I'm at my age now. One of my worst body parts due to powerlifting is legs, and I tell my son that one of the things if you're going to be a bodybuilder in general, it doesn't matter what type of competition, legs are the separator. Everybody's got an upper body, but from that perspective, you live and die by what's below your waist from that perspective. So I kind of messed up you can call it messing up, but if I ever wanted to be a bodybuilder, that's probably my weakest point right now is having balanced legs for me. It's also the hardest for a natural, as you know, to be able to develop muscle mass and be able to keep it with lower body fat. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, maybe I'm going to wait till 50, 55 or 60 or something and then relook at it again because I have a feeling I figured that the better chance I'd have the older I get. And I've actually kind of seen that, by the way, as a positive thing with social media, getting back to that, where I have seen some competitors who look great that are older masters competitors. So that's really what I'm saying. And of course, it would have to be drug-free, would have to be connected to it as well. So, and right now, there's not a lot, like I said, of contest even in men's physique with over 50. So I'm going with both of those. I've thought about those. Nothing serious. My wife had already gone through the ringers of powerlifting back in the day, so we wouldn't even consider it at this point just because of that. I called in all my markers many years ago for decades, sitting at powerlifting meets, as you know, Bob, is like watching grass grow. So
it's true. It's like an all-day thing.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that holds me back too. My wife would. There's no way, even if I did consider it at this point, she was. No, the markers are in. You spent all your chips for 10 years when you're dragging me to powerlifting contests. Especially when we were first married and everything. So, and I quit when my son was born in 1991, basically. So that was from 86 to 91, and even before we were married, I was dragging around to powerlifting contests. So,
yeah, what the most fun part of the powerlifting contest was for me? They usually have weigh-ins a couple of hours before the meet, right? I'd usually be right on the edge of the weight class. I'd either be heavy for the 181s or light for the 198s. This is way back a long, long time ago because I haven't seen south of 200 in a while. When I was competing, I was 181 usually. So usually before the meet, I'd have to lose 5 or 6 pounds, I remember such exhilaration. It was just happiness, right? When you make the weigh-in after several days of suffering. Then you come in and it weighs 180 and a half and it's just balancing back and forth and you made it and now it's time to go stuff your face. Remember that?
Yeah, and you know what? What I actually had a lesson learned about that is even a lesson that I learned about that was horrible because it was an outside contest. And it was in Lansing, Michigan. They have every summer, my training partner and I think we did it 3 or 4 years in a row. They had an outdoor deadlift-only contest. And what I learned was horrible about it was, with respect to what you're just talking about, is if not eating food you're used to. And both of us almost, and it was 90 degrees out, both of us almost threw up on the platform. Because we were stuffing ourselves with food our body wasn't used to. It was 90 degrees, sitting out in the heat. So yeah, we barely kept it down. So that's my biggest memory about, very specific to that. And I never did learn that until after I stopped powerlifting. I was getting upset stomach because you'd stuff yourself and it wasn't food that you're used to. So your body kind of didn't know what the heck to do with it, and you're like, oh my gosh, my gut.
I know exactly, what that was like, because sometimes you're suffering for like the final 4 or 5 days to make the weight, and you're sitting in the sauna even, you're spitting, you're pissing, you're doing everything, right? And you barely make it. And then you just go out and just pig out. And sometimes you do too much, just like you just said. And then at the meet, you're belching and farting and almost puking because you ate too much. I think one, when you put the weight belt on to squat or something, and you almost, you can't do it almost. I think I made the weight, and I got down to about 180, but I think I competed at like 186 or something.
Well, yeah, and then you had that whole mindset of, yeah, man, I'm going to compete. I'm going to add this. My weight's going to shoot up. It's going to give me all this extra leverage and everything like that. And I'm going to put up PRs and everything, you know.
Yeah, and usually after you do that, you do worse. You know, you don't do as good because you stuff yourself too much. I want to encourage all of our listeners to check out Bill's sites. It's cyberpump.com and transformyourphysique.com. And thank you so much, Bill, for being on the show.
Well, hey, Bob, it was great to talk to you, and I always have fun, and I could do this all night probably from that perspective, and I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Don't be a flamingo, you have to do your squats. Don't be a flamingo, real lifters work their legs.
Yo, Bob, it's just Christian. Just wanted to give you a call and just say, do not be a flamingo. It's easy enough prevented with variations of the squat, namely the front squat and the back squat. Easy prevented. Don't be one, whatever you do, because they sure do look funny. Thanks again for having me. Take care, sir. Bye.
Don't be a flamingo, you have to do your squats. Don't be a flamingo, real lifters work their legs.
That's going to do it for this edition of Natural Strength Night on mindforceradio.com. Please bookmark that website, mindforceradio.com. Bob is always looking for new writers for naturalstrength.com who are old school, hardcore, write with passion, and have a strong anti-steroid stance. He also wants your training questions so they can be answered on the show. Please send your articles and training questions to Bob at mindforceradio@earthlink.net. Thanks for listening. See you next time.